Good morning, good morning. It is early in the morning. I got my morning coffee. I'm excited to speak with you fine people this morning. If you guys don't know me, my name is Dean. I'm the CEO of Stealth Capital. I am an investor, trader, entrepreneur, business builder, any number of titles you want to slap on there. I make these videos mainly so that my future children and their children will be able to look back at my life and my journey and learn hopefully from some of the mistakes and lessons I've made along the way. And also in the process, hopefully this is helpful to you as the audience. I think today's video is mainly going to be a short one, and I wanted to talk about the topic of consistency and work ethic and how it ties to passion and inspiration. I think as a young person, it's very, very easy to be inspired and to be excited about these big dreams and big desires and things that people generally want to accomplish, whether in their careers, whether in fitness, whether in dating, any aspect of life. Because of the massive influx of social media marketing and social media in general, and also how intertwined technology has now become in all our lives, I think the process of the inception of an idea, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a business owner, I want to be a business builder, I want to be a trader, and to the point of success, right, which most people associate with this image of a person in front of a Lamborghini, a Bugatti, a fancy apartment, lots of beautiful women or men around them, whatever that symbol is, right? I think there's a big disconnect between that process of like the first idea and then the final image. And the process in between, I think, is the vast majority of what most people will be going through. And yet it's the piece that perhaps is the least sexy and the part that most people don't talk about in their journeys. I'm not sure if it's because it doesn't sell well or if it's merely because it's not as attention grabbing as the picture next to a Lamborghini. I personally can obviously buy many Lamborghinis if I wanted to, but I don't think it's a good usage of money. And I also genuinely feel like the people who are always posting that stuff, unless they're doing it very strategically to capture an audience that is especially stimulated by that image, it's actually perhaps a misunderstanding, I think, at least in my humble opinion, of what genuinely brings fulfillment and happiness to someone's life. To go back to the topic of consistency. So once you have this idea if you want to accomplish something, it's wonderful. And there might be a period of time when you're very, very inspired and you're every day, I'm super passionate, I'm able to work 14 hours a day on this thing. I don't need to sleep, I don't need to eat, I don't need to work out, I can just do this thing. That is amazing and definitely is something that is very exciting. I think most young people that I encounter, that's the honeymoon phase of building a business, building a relationship, etc. The real work actually comes after that period. And so if there was a curve of excitement, I think at the start it's very, very high. And then after a couple of weeks, couple of months, it starts waning as the sexiness or the newness of this endeavor becomes the everyday norm and the everyday quote unquote grind. And I think a huge part of becoming successful in any endeavor or any venture is understanding that the grind is going to be the vast majority of the process. And I think the vast majority of the times when you wake up in the morning, you don't necessarily feel like you want to do what it is that you set out to do. I'd say statistically, if I were to just think about my own life, I'd say maybe there's 20 to 30% of the time when I'm jumping out of bed and I'm saying I'm excited to do exactly what I'm trying to do. The other time, I'd say maybe 50% of the time I'm pretty indifferent. And then the other 20% or 30%, I really just don't want to get out of bed. The difference between people that succeed, and we are one of the top performers in our space this year, if not the best performer in our space this year, is that you should learn or at least train yourself to develop a work ethic to show up every day, regardless of how you feel. It's not easy, and it's very, very tough initially when you're building that habit, but I think it's something that is absolutely imperative. Michael Phelps talks about this. All of the great athletes, all the really successful people differentiate the difference between discipline and inspiration, right? One is excitement. One is you are forcing yourself because you love yourself and you know what you're capable of and what your potential is, so that in the days when you don't feel like doing what you know you should be doing, you still do it. Even if you have to kind of drag your way through it, you still get through it. And in a long enough time scale, you actually look back and you're really proud of yourself, because there's so many times when you could have quit. There's so many times when you could have given yourself the easy route out and you didn't. And in that process, it actually hones who you are as a character. And in honing that character, you end up being able to create and manifest the businesses, the relationships, the opportunities, etc., externally, that will be the symbols of what other people see as success. Now, that being said, I think it's also very, very important to be prudent around whether or not the direction you're going in actually makes sense, right? There's a fine line between being consistent, having good work ethic, and not giving up, and also doing something that is just plain idiotic, for lack of a better word. Sometimes, for example, especially in trading, I can give a good example. There's a position that you think will most likely make you money, right? And once again, none of this is financial advice, speaking for educational and entertainment purposes. So sometimes you'll put on a trade and you'll expect to make a lot of money, because I think generally you don't put on a trade unless you think the expected value is positive, and you're more likely than not to make some money. The issue now, why most beginner traders lose money, is because they don't have good risk management. They are unable to accept the fact that sometimes even the best planned trade will lose. The difference between a successful trader and a not successful trader is generally the successful trader, A, has done the work to develop a system that allows them to, on average, over the long term, have a very positive expected value. Whereas the amateur trader is somebody who is more of a gambler and is unable to accept the fact that sometimes they will be winners, sometimes they will be losers. And in that process, they have to be extremely disciplined in cutting losses. When you run a startup, it's actually very similar to trading in the sense that as long as you don't blow up, in the sense of you lose all your money, you have many, many, many shots on goal, right? It's very, very hard to screw up significantly if you don't blow all of your money in a very short period of time. What that looks like in trading is basically if you start trading, and let's say you have $100 to work with. Let's say you start with 50 cents as a risk limit, right? Or maybe even 25 cents as a risk limit. You have so many shots on goal when you're only risking those amounts to start with that it allows you to make the mistakes that are required for you to succeed. No entrepreneur, no athlete, no artist starts out and makes zero mistakes and then is at the final picture of them standing next to a Lamborghini or whatever that gold medal is for them in their final image. In startup land, it's your cash burn. So I think in my working with a lot of young entrepreneurs, I observe that, especially the ones where it's one of their first endeavors, a large part of them are driven by the idea of being successful. And I think they've been brainwashed by this kind of online guru world where they start out something, they're super famous, they're featured on these famous magazines or these articles, and then, they live happily ever after as multi-millionaires or even multi-billionaires. And that's definitely not what happens, right? I think what happens is they make a lot of mistakes. And you want to be able to keep cash burn low enough such that you can afford to make those mistakes, pivot when you need to pivot, but then also keep a really, really good relationship with your investors. The people that back you are people that basically trusted you enough to give you money to take these shots on goal. And so being a really good and thoughtful startup founder is somebody who thinks from the perspective of investors as well, not just their selfish needs and saying, hey, I am the world's greatest entrepreneur and I'm going to make myself famous and make all this money and all this stuff, right? Because life is long, like I said in my previous videos. Over the long term, the relationships you have with your investors, with your business partners, with your employees, etc., will matter a lot more than maybe this short-term gain of XYZ. So to summarize in this video, I think there's two key points. One is that starting any endeavor that you want to take seriously and you want to do well takes a sustained period of effort over a long period of time. And in that process, I would say only 20%, maybe at most 30% of the time, you feel super inspired and excited to do what it is that you're trying to do. And the rest of the time, you have to discipline yourself to just show up and also do what is required, even if you don't feel like doing it. And sometimes that means front loading things that you really, really don't want to do. And the lower version of yourself would love to just procrastinate indefinitely and choosing to actively tackle that first thing in the morning. The second piece is a corollary to that in the sense that you also have to be very, very thoughtful And to borrow a very famous internet person's word, you have to be perspicacious and you have to be self-aware. And knowing when the direction that you're going in, is it idiotic and you're just banging your head against the wall? Or is it something that you need to reassess and cut losses where necessary and also repivot and maybe try something different? And in that process of being perspicacious and being very thoughtful and being able to assess one's own state objectively without ego is keeping losses low and trying to cut losses quickly whenever possible if you're trading. But in the startup world, it's similar, right? You want to basically keep burn low to afford as long a runway as possible and have as many shots on goal as possible without burning it all initially, and then you're kind of screwed, right? And so those are the two pieces of advice I wanted to share this morning. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. If content like this is stuff you're interested in and you would like to follow me, feel free to subscribe here and also follow me on Twitter